When you hear the words Reiki or breathwork, what do you think of? I know most conventional medicine practitioners, doctors, nurses, people who take care of patients in the hospital or in clinics may not be super familiar with either of those terms. I think that breathwork is definitely becoming much more talked about. But Reiki is something that I think a lot of people still feel like is kind of woo-woo. It's like energy medicine, energy modality. What does that even mean? Well, today on the Harness Your Health podcast, I have been talking to Molly Aldrich, and we are discussing all of this. We're discussing her work as an oncology nurse and taking care of patients, and how that led to this discovery of Reiki and how it has truly benefited and supported her life and well-being, and how she now gives back to others with her interest in these modalities. So, thank you for listening and being here. Thank you so much for being here. This is Kara Cedarberg, and this is the Harness Your Health podcast. And this is a pretty exciting episode because I have Molly Aldrich here, who is a friend and a longtime nurse colleague of mine. And we are going to be talking to her about her journey into some more integrative and holistic types of modalities and how that came about. And this is definitely a subject that I really want to explore more on this podcast. I want conventionally trained practitioners to be able to share their stories so that we can really bridge this way we talk about health. And it's not just conventional or holistic, that we can just all live in the same continuum to support our listeners, obviously, and ourselves, which we'll find out is a big part of it because obviously we're human too. And I think everybody obviously has their health journey. So this is Molly Aldrich. I'll just give a short bio so you understand her background. But Molly has been an oncology nurse for over 20 years in a wide variety of roles in direct patient care, in leadership, in management. She is a Reiki Master and a breathwork practitioner and has come to understand how important the mind-body connection is. She loves the quote by Jay Stanford: "Health is a state of body. Wellness is a state of being." Welcome, Molly.
Hi, Karis. Thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it. I'm
Yeah,
excited to
it's gonna be
explore this topic with you.
yeah, it's gonna be fun. So we obviously know you've been a nurse for a long time. You and I worked together for many years in outpatient. I don't think we worked together in inpatient, did we?
No, I don't think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so just outpatient setting. And, so you've been in this work experience life of taking care of cancer patients for a long time. And, I always tell people, I feel like a lot of wonderful people work in the field of oncology, people who have huge hearts and really care. Not to say that there's a lot of other practitioners that don't care, obviously they do. But I think to come in day after day and see patients and really get to know them and their families, it really takes a special person. So I just want to acknowledge you for that because I think it is not always easy, the work that people who work in oncology do. And I think maybe stepping back, it probably lends itself to your story, right? A little bit. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that, about your story.
Yeah. So, been an oncology nurse for over 20 years. Kind of crazy how quickly the time has gone with that. But like you said, there's a lot of emotions that you bring into that role and a lot of getting to be close with families and getting to know everyone's story. And so sometimes, you take that on unknowingly and you can store all that energy and all those emotions in your body. And, some patients do really well. And unfortunately, some patients their journey comes to an end. And so really have like learning to deal with that grief and stuff, took a toll on me. And so I was looking for ways to channel that energy and like try and figure out how I can just get more in balance in my life. And so, yeah, that's kind of my
Yeah, that's a great way of explaining it, I think. Do you feel like, I think in just talking to a lot of just healthcare practitioners in general or people who work in healthcare, that we don't always know, at least I know I didn't know, just like the amount of stress that I was really kind of holding in. Do you feel like that was the case for you too?
Oh, 100%, which is how Reiki found me.
Okay.
If I can just go ahead and jump into that part.
Please.
I mean, because it really truly saved me at a time in my life that I just didn't even know like how bad it was. And so at that time, I was working as a leader in the Cancer Center Infusion, and we had Reiki practitioners that would come to our Cancer Center Infusion and give Reiki to the patients. And watching them just come and help settle the patients who were super anxious, who were really struggling, it really just profoundly helped them on their journeys. And so it was really fun to witness from afar. And I was really glad that we could provide that. I didn't look at it as something that I needed. It was kind of foreign and it was out there. And I was like, oh, that's so great for the patients. Like, how good for them. And then one
Yeah.
day, one of the volunteers came into our office and she just kind of looked at me and was like, are you okay? And
Mm.
I wasn't. I don't think I was ready to admit it to myself or to anyone close to me, but I truly wasn't. I had lost a nephew kind of unexpectedly to a drug overdose. I was in a really like stressful leadership position. And then also just still dealing with some grief from some patients that I had lost that, which is kind of why I stepped into leadership was to kind of get out of direct patient care for a little while. And so she looked at me and was like, come with me. And I was like, okay. And like, where are we going? And she put me in one of the infusion chairs, chair 8. I'll still remember it to this day. And she started to work on me, if you will. And all of a sudden, I got really heavy. And
Mm.
she was like, did you feel that? And I was like, yeah, like what just happened? And she was like, I think I just put your soul back into your body.
Oh
And
my
I
God.
was like, I mean, I still get chills right now. And I was like, holy crap, like, I really think you did. I had no idea how, like, just disconnected I was. And just that feeling, like, I just wanted more of that, obviously, because it felt so good. And
Mhm.
so I started seeing her just kind of professionally outside of the cancer center, like, paying for sessions and going to see her. And just found that time really magical. And, she kept being like, oh, like, you can learn and to do this on yourself. Like, you can become trained. And so I was intrigued. And, life happens and you kind of put things off. And then we got a donor from the cancer center that one gave a bit like a large sum of money, and their target was to help build resiliency in nursing or with
Mm.
nurses. And so I, at that point, was the nurse manager. And so I was like, oh, sign me up, sign up, whoever wants to do this, like, let's do it. And so the training, there was some urgency. Like, both the instructor and I were like, we need to do this soon. And it was February of 2020.
Oh my gosh.
So by we started like the last week of February and trained myself and some nurses. And Karis, honestly, this training was what got me through COVID. It
Oh my
was
God.
so wonderful. It helped keep me like so grounded. I look back on it and as the manager and during the stressful time when everything was just every day it was something new, and I was able to be the leader I needed to be for that group. And then just also for myself, being able to give myself Reiki every day and just be grounded in what was
Yeah.
happening all around me.
For sure. I mean, I always feel like nurses tend to have an intuition, especially nurses who have been around for a little bit. And like, I know as a brand new nurse, I didn't always feel like I had the intuition, but as my career went on and I trusted myself in situations and things, it's just kind of like that sixth sense or something that lots of people have. But like, I feel like nurses in particular, if you've ever seen a nurse that's like, I don't know what's going on, but I know something's wrong, that kind of thing. And
Totally.
so, how awesome that you trusted that in yourself and you guys just knew, right, that it needed to happen because there really wasn't a lot of warning.
Yeah.
And at the time of this recording that we're recording this was just recently the anniversary, March 13th, 2026, which was a Friday the 13th also, because that day was the day, I should say, I'm sorry, the day that my kids left school for that year and never went back. And so we always remember that. It was a Friday the 13th. Yeah, so you're like right up to the window, right? Like I
Yeah.
know people who've had babies that were born at the beginning of March and they're like, we had no idea what was going to happen in the next week or so. Well, how amazing that you had that. Like who knows what it would have been like,
Yeah.
right? Obviously that your personal experience and then that you felt like okay with proceeding and seeing this woman and having that as a part of your support because, I think people often talk about self-care and different things that we do, and it's just kind of an overused term.
Mhm.
But you know, people are like, well, what is the right thing? The right thing is the thing that you do and that
Right.
you will do, right? And I always preach like consistency as much as you can is really important in everything. So, in any way, foundationally, that you're taking care of your health, if you're consistent, then
Mhm.
it will show at the end, after a period of time. That's where the magic really happens. So, that's awesome. So, you got certified in this program through the Cancer Center. Then were you guys supporting patients or was it more just geared towards staff or?
So we learned level one and level two. Level two means you can practice on other people. The training wasn't to be for patients. It really was to be for ourselves and
Okay.
like doing the self Reiki and the like just building your own resilience package. I think when you're trained in it and you can center yourself and you just kind of go in with that mindset, the nurses who did the program would say, they could get in that like just calm state and go start an IV and like it would go smooth because
Yeah.
like they're in that mindset. And then like, if you're in 3 feet within 3 feet of someone, they can feel like, go build off your energy. So if you're calm and
Yeah.
you're in that good state, then it helps the patient. So even though they weren't necessarily laying their hands on it, I think the patients were also getting the benefits from this training.
Oh, that is such a great example because I remember, in oncology, we work with a lot of patients that have central lines. So a lot of times you can go through your experience wherever you're working and not have a lot of practice starting IVs. So
Yeah.
I know multiple times in my career where I would like be going over to start an IV on a patient, and it's the first time I met them, and I'm trying to be like calm and cool and collected, and my heart is like beating
Yeah.
out of my chest, you
Yeah.
know? So that's where the self Reiki would come in very handy. So that is really cool. I didn't really know that part of it or understand that the different levels of Reiki were that itself really first, which is
Mhm.
such another part of something that I really help people with, and for myself has been honestly kind of an issue is like, and I think women in particular, nurses or people who are in like caregiving type of jobs, they just tend to take care of everyone else, over themselves. And so being able to have that ability to like ground yourself in the moment is just, I mean, that carries over to anything. That's
Yeah.
really, really amazing. You mentioned energy, and I just want to bring it up because I think in conventional medicine, we don't talk about this really at all. Maybe it's changed. I'm not practicing as a nurse right now. But, I think that's one thing that people kind of look at holistic health practitioners that use like bioenergetic testing or in energy medicine. You would consider Reiki as an energy modality, right? And
Mhm.
they kind of think of it as like woo-woo. And so I just wanted to comment on thinking about it from a more of a scientific standpoint and like the body, everything is energy, right? So
Yeah.
like everything is energy, holds energy. Everything in the body is energy and holds energy, and that energy can be measured. So if you just think about those kind of principles of science, it's helpful for people to understand. And I think everybody has felt that before. Like, have you ever had someone come up to you that is like, way too much energy for you and you're like, whoa. Or the opposite, right? Like someone who maybe needs you, especially as a nurse or
Mhm.
taking care of someone. And so I think if you just think of that on just a very basic level, you can kind of tune into that a little bit. And knowing how you're feeling and having that awareness is really important because I think a lot of us just go through life, kind of like you mentioned at the beginning of your story, like you're just working your ass off. Like you're taking care of people and doing hard work. Like you're not thinking about yourself. And then at the end of the day, when you might have a little time to think about yourself, you're exhausted. Like
Right.
your nervous system is like checked out. So
You're trying to figure out what's for dinner.
Yeah, exactly. And that might be cereal because you have no other option, that
Yeah.
you're capable of at that moment. And so, I want to validate that because I think that that's a lot of people. I know when my husband and I first moved to Denver, he was a resident and we wouldn't have any plan for dinner and would come home and just stare at each other at like 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night and be so tired and just grab something out of a can,
Yeah.
box because that's all we had the energy to do. That is a very real existence for a lot of people who are in these caretaking jobs and jobs where they're kind of pouring themselves into everyone else. So, switching gears a little bit, more recently, you have been offering breathwork sessions. So, I want to hear how you got into breathwork and talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. After learning and loving Reiki, I still practice it daily and it's part of my routine. But, you always are kind of like, well, what's next? I'm a constant learner and a constant, like, yeah, I want to explore all different options because there's a lot out there that, we can use in our toolbox. It doesn't have to just be one thing.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't really sure what the next thing was. And then Instagram figured it out for me, as it always does. I started getting, hits on Instagram about breath work and classes and breathing and all this stuff. And I took it as a sign. I was like, all right, well, this must be the next thing. And so I had a friend that was coming in town, and I was like, hey, would you be willing to go to this breathwork class with me in person? Let's try it out. Because I always think it's fun to do classes with friends because you can have that shared experience. And so, luckily for me, she agreed. And so I signed us up, and we really had no idea what we were getting into because I had never really, experienced breath work. And so we went, and the class was wonderful. And after it, I was like, I don't even know what just happened. And I didn't even have like the words for it. And the facilitator was, at the end describing like how she is having a teacher workshop coming up and who's interested and everything. And my friend kind of looked at me, she's like, you're going to sign up to do that, right? And I was like, I already signed up while you were in the bathroom. Like I was in. So I knew I wanted to learn breath work. And then obviously once I did the training, then I finally kind of had the words for what it was I felt that first time and what I wanted to share with people. So breath work for me, I didn't realize like just how much it worked on a physiological level, like really got into your nervous system and was able to regulate you that way. And so different from Reiki, which is more passive and working on your energy centers and getting you nice and balanced, this can actually work, on your actual nervous system. And so learning to get out of my sympathetic and into my parasympathetic and just feeling so much lighter after doing the sessions because you're just able to remove all that stuck energy and stuck emotions. And a lot of times you don't even know what you're releasing, but you just feel so good. And so once again, I was like, what is that feeling? And it is all the chemicals you're releasing in your brain. So it is all the endorphins and it is, all those things that make you feel really good. And then I had another teacher describe for a different class I was taking, and she said, bliss is any feeling fully felt. And then it
Mhm.
just hit me right then. And I was like, that's the feeling after breath work. It's complete bliss. If you really do the work and are like, allow yourself to feel all the feels, then like you just feel completely blissful on the end. So I love teaching breath work because I really just seeing people at the end in that blissful state. It's pretty spectacular.
Yeah, I have taken many of your classes. You do teach in-person breathwork in Denver, so we can make sure that people can find the link for that, and obviously how to follow you so that they can look more into your services. But the in-person session that I did was kind of at a little bit of a rough time for me personally, and it was kind of a lot. But looking back at it afterwards, and I would love to do another one, I just haven't been able to get it to line up with my schedule. I mean, it's a lot of work, if you will. It's not
Yeah.
like laying there and doing nothing.
Yeah.
It is a lot of work to focus on your breathing and take those deep breaths and follow the instructions. But it was incredible, like to feel your physiology change like that in such a short amount of time, really.
Mhm.
It's just so powerful. And, I think so many people in this society that we live in are just, either stuck in fight or flight or spend a lot of time there and then pass out at the end of the day. And so having these kind of things, that's one of the things I kind of took away from breath work, both the in-person and then the online sessions, is that I can utilize this just for 2 minutes for myself, something like a phone call I don't want to make or take or something like that, and it's like making my heart race or something like that, that I can use a little bit of those breath work techniques to kind of, like you said, downregulate your nervous system a little bit, make you feel safe, like there's nothing tragic going on here.
Yeah. There's no animal chasing you.
Exactly. No lions
Yeah.
close by. And so I think, a lot of times people kind of get in those like scenarios where they just are in this repetitive cycle for whatever reason. It could be with their spouse or with their kids. I know when my kids were little, there were definitely times where I would just like, it was almost like a switch. It helps you to the awareness combined with the technique of being able to like slow yourself down is just so beneficial. Can
Yeah, I mean,
you
you
talk-
can change in like 1 minute. You can basically get out of that fight or flight and just into your parasympathetic. Like
Yeah,
just turning consciously to your breath, I think is enough. I mean, there are different techniques you can do, but I don't even think sometimes you have to make it complicated. I think if
yeah,
you just turn your attention to your breath and just watch your inhales and watch your exhales.
yeah.
One of the things I always like to say or try and practice for myself is just the power in the pause. Before you react in those moments, before you answer that phone call that you know is going to trigger you, like there's
Mhm.
so much power in just taking those few deep breaths and
Yeah,
centering yourself before you do it. But if it's not only you, but the person on the other end of that line too.
exactly. What would it be like if every patient or every person that like, I think about people in my life that have had some serious surgeries in the last couple of years, like maybe in the pre-op area or in like the chemo infusion, like before they get their treatment or something. If we had the capability for people to have a little bit of focus breath work, because I do think sometimes when people are in that stress state, it's not always easy for them. If they haven't been practicing it, they're not going to be able to just be like, "Oh, I'm going to do some deep breathing," right?
Yeah, no, it already has to be in your toolbox. Like you can't, yeah, it has to be something you can pull out. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why it's a great time to just learn it now, or when it's right for you. Like when is a good time for you to just start practicing this? And like you said, it's just a minute or two. It's
Yeah.
literally not long, and I really like doing it first thing in the morning when I wake up, because what happens for me is my brain, that's like a switch too. It's like I feel kind of like I'm waking up and then it's like boing. I don't even turn the lights on, but it feels like the lights are on. And my brain is just like, oh, what's on the calendar? Who do you have to email? All the things. And so I really like doing it right then. And
Hmm.
I just lay in bed and do like a cut. No, like you said, no like specific way. I
Yeah.
just take very big, full, deep breaths. And then I like to do it before I go to sleep too, because I have teenagers. And
Yeah.
sometimes, we're talking about things later at night than I would prefer to talk about them. So that's just what
Yeah.
teenagers do. And so, it's a good down regulating way for me to just fall asleep in a more quiet manner and not be having mind racing, thinking about everything.
Yeah, definitely. No,
Yeah,
that's, I love that.
awesome. So talk about because the other thing you do is you do online breathwork sessions, which I've participated in quite a few of those. And anybody could join those, right? I mean,
Yeah.
bring the time zone. If you're in, I don't know, Europe or something, it might be a little weird time of day. But if you're in
Yeah.
the States, it's basically in the evening.
Typically in the evenings, I usually do around 7 Mountain Standard Time. Yeah, and I mean, they're similar to the in-person ones. I make a curated playlist. I intuitively kind of pick songs once the group's kind of there, and I feel like the right songs and the right group always come together. It always works out really well. With my style of breath work, we do kind of work up to a somatic release, if you will, which I find just kind of helps people release even more. I was trained that it was a scream was kind of the somatic release, but I've been kind of refining it just more as I've found that a lot of women, obviously attend my breath work. It's open to both sexes, but women really struggle with their throat chakras. They're just really locked down. We haven't learned to use our voice. It's very constricted. And so asking women to just scream on command This can be a lot for them. And
I'm sure.
so really we just focus for the somatic release. It can be a scream. Some people laugh, some people cry, some people just lay there. But I just feel like being intentional kind of with like that focus and that release also helps people release even more, like kind of get to those sticky parts that they hadn't quite released yet with the breathwork practice. Yeah, so the whole breathwork probably session lasts about 45 minutes or so. And then there's like meditation song that we play at the end, which is part of the integration and just letting people kind of have the whole experience wash over them. And then we come back together as a group and ask people to share. Some people will and some people won't. You know, you're not forced to. But like I said earlier, like the right group always comes together because I feel like there's always kind of an underlying thread for what either came up for people, what people felt, what they were able to release. Like there's always kind of a common theme, which to me is part of the magic. And so I love that part. So yeah, so they're similar. You can do it online or you can do it in person. In person, you know, I can put my hands on you. So there's a little bit of Reiki, a bit of energy, being able to help ground you and stable you. But you can also send Reiki long distance. So like you can still get that benefit and balance through the internet as well. So
Yeah, that's right. I'm
yeah.
glad you brought that up. Yeah, and it's fun in the classes because I feel like I see some people, that I haven't seen for a while. So that's always kind of fun.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and
I
at the end of the day, I mean, I'm like ready for bed at 8 o'clock.
yeah, I think it definitely, depending on the time of day, can either really energize you or it can help you
Yeah.
fall right to sleep. It just really depends.
Yeah, I have a
Yeah,
pretty like strong circadian clock, so I think if I did it earlier in the day, it probably would. I would probably just go outside. I wonder about doing it outside. That would be pretty cool. Like just with the light, because light is so energizing and good for your mitochondria and all that.
yes.
Maybe in the summer we could do a outside.
Yeah, I did a group session with some friends and they were also nurses as well. We did it at a friend's house and did it outside. The key is to do
Oh,
it early before it gets too hot in the
yes.
summer.
Everybody's
But
sweating.
yeah, but it was lovely because like, you know, you hear the birds and like I felt like when the scream came, a lot of the chipmunks were, you know, chiming in as well. So
That's
added
awesome.
nature. Yeah.
Talk about energy.
It felt it.
So I know that you have done some small group sessions like that too. What would be another setting other than just like a friend group that you would see people maybe wanting to utilize something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're doing a girls' trip or you're like wanting to try something different, like sometimes, you know, you kind of do this. Like, I feel like we're at the age where you don't really need to start drinking at 10 in the morning and going to brunch. And so, like, it's kind of a nice way to start out your girls' trip on the weekends is just to have that shared experience. And then I think it just kind of sets the tone of like, just you go in feeling good and lighter and yeah, so that's one
Ah,
that I've been doing a lot lately. Couples also, I mean, I think it's
cool.
great to do it with your partner. If you can
Yeah.
get the man in your life to try it, let me know.
Yeah.
Trying to get mine, but you know, no. Yeah, no, I think just yeah, and that can those can be in person and online. And I just yeah, I think when you kind of come when you have that common like shared bond, like I just think it kind of even intensifies the breath work even more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that made me think about my kids too,
Mm.
because like when your kids are the age that my kids are, they're like kind of becoming a lot more independent. The relationship definitely changes, which is good in a lot of ways. Like you feel good as a parent, you've set them up, right, to be where they are, but they still need you.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes you don't really know how to be because
Yeah.
you've been taking care of them your whole life, and then all of a sudden it's just like they're good, they got it. So yeah, I feel like any relationship that you wanted to cultivate or deepen is really neat. That's cool. I hadn't really thought about any of that before.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll make sure that all of your contact information, your Instagram, which is where you have a lot of information, where when your sessions are. If you get on Molly's email list, then she'll send you an email every month and tell you when the sessions are. That's what I always look for and like what can I get in? And then if you need anything special, like let Molly know. She can maybe help you out with your group experience.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
one-on-one too.
So, yeah. So, you still work as a nurse in
Mhm.
conventional healthcare and taking care of cancer patients. And what would you say to someone, whether it was a patient or another nurse or someone that really wanted to kind of start using some of these modalities, like what we've been talking about today for their own health? How would they start? Like, what would be the simplest thing, do you think?
I mean, there's so much online. Like, I mean, I think you can find just like Insight Timer is great if you just wanted to start with like a simple meditation practice. I mean, I think there's access everywhere. Like, you just have to look
Yeah.
for it. And sometimes you don't even know what you're looking for. So I think that's
Yeah.
when you,
Yeah, I think it's hard because there is so much information. I don't think the information isn't the problem.
yeah.
It's like, how do you start something? And I usually suggest too that people pick one thing and then try and stick with it for a little bit because if you do it one time, it's probably not going to give you a lot of benefit. You're not going to really notice that much. But if you say, for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to do a 5-minute meditation on Insight
Yeah.
Timer or find something on YouTube if you like the video, something like that, you're right. And just stick with the same person, stick with the same time. I know my family is very attached to the Andy from Headspace and his voice. So
The
they
voice
don't
is key.
they don't want to do like other people's voices. You have that, but I think you're right. There's no right or wrong. Just start it. If you're a patient in treatment or you have stressful things going on, doing this as a part of your routine. Like if you were coming into the cancer center, you could go in while you're waiting to see your nurse. You could do a little breath work in your chair. You could do a short little meditation on your own. There's so many options. And, I just really want people to feel empowered that they have this within their control. And it's a huge part of how your body is connected and really supports your well-being and your health and healing. Thanks so much, Molly. Make sure you guys visit Molly's Instagram so you can see when her online sessions are for anyone, and then in person if you're in Denver. And I hope everyone has a great day.
Thanks, Karis. This
Yeah,
was great.
thanks. Have a good day. I feel so truly blessed to have had this conversation with Molly for myself, but also for all of you. I really want this podcast to be a place where people can listen to these interviews and recordings and take something from it. What can you use from this recording, from what you heard today, and apply it towards your life to support you? Because the bottom line is that you have a lot of control over your health. And yes, you need your doctor and all of your other wonderful healthcare practitioners, but you have a lot at your disposal to harness your own health. And this is my ultimate goal with this podcast is to help people feel capable and confident in that regard. If you want to reach out to me, you certainly can on my website, primetenourish.com/contact. You can write me an email there. You can schedule a free discovery call. If you even just want to chat with me, I love to chat with people who are going through their own health journey, or maybe you're a practitioner that wants to get some sort of holistic training. I also teach at the Nutrition Therapy Institute that's in Arvada, Colorado. And so I work with students every day to help them launch their career into the holistic health space. So I love talking with people about this. If you're interested in being interviewed on my podcast, you can certainly send me a message that way also. And I look forward to connecting with you. Have a great day. The information shared on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. I am not a medical doctor, and this content is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Please consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any decisions related to your health, especially if you have a medical condition or are taking medications.